We talk about this week's developments in our weekly one-on-one with Tony Evers, who joined us earlier. And Governor, thanks very much for doing so.
Thanks, Frederica.
So we led into this talking about how your phased-in approach to reopening businesses was starting this week when the Supreme Court shelved your plan. What was it like first when you learned of the decision and then when you read it?
Well, it was disappointing. You know, I've always felt that facts and the state statutes and precedents mattered. It certainly didn't in this case. It was just a wrong-headed decision. And so the bottom line is the impact has been immediate. There is essentially they found it to be unconstitutional, and so we've moved into the new world of having no rule of the road.
What was your reaction when you saw people pouring into bars immediately following that decision?
That was, you know, I know not all bars and all businesses are that way, but certainly to have the Tavern League get out in front of this and then having many two people together in a small place, shoulder to shoulder, no mask. It's inviting the virus to walk on in and be transmitted. That's the bottom line.
In the face of that, several local or county health departments imposed their own safety orders in place of the statewide plan, but now some are starting to rescind them, worried about whether or not, in fact, they're legal because of that court ruling. What in your mind does this say about this local approach?
Well, and that's just it. It creates great confusion, first of all, and depending on the county you live in, and so that's the main concern. Some of them may walk them back, some of them won't. I think it's less around the legality of it. I think that, you know, it's a different section of the law, so I think they have the ability to do it. But they want to make sure that they're consistent with their neighbors, and I guess it's a rational thing to do. But at the end of the day, having this being done locally creates a lot of confusion, and frankly, I think it doesn't do much for people's confidence.
You're now meeting with Speaker Vos and Majority Leader Fitzgerald to work up administrative rules to manage the pandemic, and your Department of Health wrote a scope statement outlining those rules. I read them. They look very much like Safer at Home and Badger Bounce Back under a different name. Why do you think those are going to fly?
Well, first of all, a scope statement is a very broad statement of what we're going to be looking at, and as you see, there's lots of maze in that statement, and so yes, it gives us a parameter. What matters is the rule itself, but also, Frederica, to be honest with you, this isn't going to be any grand bargain among the Democrats and the Republicans, because essentially we were told by the leadership that they weren't going to accept anything that creates any new restrictions or new parameters around what's happening now. In fact, they're very happy with what exists.
In fact, the co-chair of the Rules Committee that must vote on and can veto any rules, Republican Senator Stephen Nass, said, quote, "I call on Governor Evers to withdraw the scope statement and end this needless confrontation." What is your reaction to that?
I'd say wait till you see the rule. I mean, this is a scope statement, Senator Nass. This is not the rule. But again, I don't want people to believe that this is some sort of panacea and a grand bargain. We've already been told by the leadership that what's going to come out of this is not going to be any kind of impingement or restriction on what already has happened. In fact, they're very happy about that. You know, shortly after the turn of the month, May 1st or 2nd, I get a letter from Speaker Vos saying they are looking forward to a slow, deliberate, thoughtful way of opening the economy, just like we are. But intervening has been this Supreme Court race, or not race, but the decision. So it is what it is. It exists, and And we're going to do everything we can to make sure we're hopeful people will still stay at home when they're not out. And we're hopeful we're going to continue to test and do the tracing and all the things that are important.
All right. Governor Tony Evers, thanks very much for joining us. Of course, we and everyone else will be watching these developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederica.